So we are live on Facebook and we are recording and we're ready to begin when you are.
Fine, thank you. I'll call the meeting to order of the Safety and Security Committee, a special meeting, Monday, February 8th, 2021. Will you do a roll call, please?
Commissioner Simmons,
Present.
Commissioner Wynn-Miller,
Present.
Commissioner Cox,
Here.
Commissioner Brown,
Here.
Commissioner Galladay, Commissioner Costello,
Present.
Commissioner Beach,
Here.
Commissioner Gladney,
Here.
Commissioner Zimmerman,
Here.
Commissioner Johnson.
Here.
Myra, was there any speaker cards presented?
Yes, we actually received 2 comment cards. The first is from Katina Wilson, representing the members of the ATU Local 788. Her topic was safety. Her comments were community public health concerns and safety, or the lack of safety for our members and public safety officers. The second speaker card that was presented was from Tom Sullivan. His topic was safety and security meeting, and his comments were, please keep the entire meeting open. Those are the only 2 cards submitted.
Very good, thank you. This time I asked Kevin Scott to join us to give us some information only. So Kevin, are you here with us? Will you please address the commission?
Sure. So this is the first time that we've had an opportunity to speak since this tragedy occurred. I will walk you through some of the public facing facts at a high altitude, and I'm hopeful that we can provide you a more in-depth briefing later in the meeting. As you guys are all familiar, we contract with G4S Solutions as our security contractor, which primarily covers the Metrolink system. On Sunday, January the 31st of 2021, I received a phone call at around 10:05 a.m. from my staff that one of our contract security officers holding a supervisory position apparently sustained gunshots and had expired at the scene. And this occurred at the North Hanley Metrolink station on the top landing adjacent to the street.
Kevin, Delmar.
Delmar, I'm sorry. Delmar. So just a little bit about the background with James. He's been with G4S since August of 2020. He was a supervisor in that zone, which covered Lambert Airport to Delmar. He was on normal patrol that morning, checking on his staff when he engaged with the suspect in question. Our hearts go out to James, his wife, and his children. He was an exemplary employee in a supervisory position, doing exactly what we asked him to do and representing our brand and our customers very well. Our team is very saddened. This was a horrific event, as I mentioned before, and he was brutally ambushed, and by this individual. We continue to work with the police departments to provide them substantial information from our technology that will help them prosecute this case, build and prosecute this case. We continue to work with them again. The Metropolitan Police Department, St. Louis Metropolitan Police Department, Homicide Division has the lead on the case, but all components of the Metrolink Police Task Force have assisted. Again, I've had to deal with these situations one too many times. And there's things in your career that will substantially change who you are as a person and your outlook on things. I just, I grieve for Mr. Cook's wife. And will do everything I can to make sure that we provide the support needed to law enforcement again for the prosecution of the individual who committed this very heinous crime. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. Appreciate that. At this time, do I have a motion for the committee to go into executive session for the purpose of discussing legal matters and security matters as permitted under by State Development Board Policy Chapter 10, Section 10.080, D1 legal and D11 security?
Mr. Simmons, I'd like to jump in here because I have a few questions that
I'm entertaining a motion to go into an executive session. Do I have a
Well,
motion?
I want to talk about the agenda first.
Do I have a
okay.
motion to go into an executive
I'll
session?
make a motion.
Have a second?
Point of
Have a
order,
roll call.
point of order.
That's
Point
Roll
of
call,
order.
please.
Excuse me?
Roll call, please.
Because I want to talk as a commissioner. How do we get an agenda item on?
There is a motion and a second on the floor,
You
please.
guys should be with me. It doesn't matter if you agree with me or not. You should be able to talk in open.
Myra, please call the roll,
agenda
please.
Item. You can't even have an agenda item. Why am I here?
Myra, please
If
call
one of
the
you
roll,
guys
please.
put something on the agenda, I would allow it.
There's a
would-
motion on the floor and a second. Please call the roll, Myra.
Commissioner
Justin?
Beach,
Yes.
Commissioner Brown,
Yes.
Commissioner Winmiller,
Aye.
Commissioner Simmons,
Yes.
Commissioner Costello,
Aye.
Commissioner Zimmerman,
I vote no for two reasons. One, I called a point of order to clarify an issue on the agenda before that, or right after that vote. Two, the agenda lists not those two reasons, but 17 reasons, which is improper. I've raised this issue before. I feel like the board and the staff are being let down by having these agendas. So I vote no for those two reasons.
Commissioner Johnson,
Aye.
Commissioner Cox,
I vote no. I believe this is absolutely illegal. I'm going to have the state's prosecutor look into this. I asked for an agenda item. We can't even get an agenda item on there as a commissioner. I don't understand why you guys aren't with me. And again, if you have a position, then state it, sell it to us and the public. Why do we have to go behind closed doors to do this? I wasn't even going to talk about that. I wanted to talk about the actual.
Myra, record his vote as a no and move on, please.
As a
Commissioner
snake.
Gladney,
Yes.
the motion passed.
Fine, thank you.
We're now ready to proceed. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We will reconvene the regular meeting. The subcommittee has any motions or votes are needed, they will be held at this time. Any discussion?
Yeah, I can kick it off here, I guess. And just to be very clear, I think it would help this board with this discussion over the next little bit. I would like, because we really have two issues here going. We have one, should our officers be able to protect themselves? And then the other issue that I seem to keep getting, and it's kind of cloudy on this compact, the other issue is it legal that our officers? So I would like to focus on just the first one first, because if we don't think that our officers should be armed, then there's really no reason to discuss the compact. First, we need to decide, what do we think as a board is the best way to protect our riders and to protect our security officers? That's what we have to decide as a board. Then we can figure out how to implement and what's the best way to implement that. Okay, so I just want to just be clear of what I think the best way to move forward is, just to simplify this, because it's very complicated. My three main items are, again, some very serious bad people are riding this system right now. They have guns. We know this. We have no protection for our good riders. We have no protection for our security officers. If one of these bad people decide they're having a bad day or just want to start shooting up the place, we have nothing to protect anybody. I feel that is very dangerous. My second point is, if security is unable to protect itself, like we've seen not just once since this policy has been enacted, but over the summer as well, with a guard who I understand is still in very, very serious condition, okay? If they're not able to protect themselves, who's there for the riders? This is the question that I get from people all the time. They're scared to ride because they don't feel like that they're safe. They need somebody there to protect them. Mr. Roach says that he wants a badge behind anyone with a gun. I'm for that as well. Let's give them more money to actual police officers and cops. If you don't want our security to actually have a weapon, then let's turn that into greeters or customer service. And let's use the security money for security, because right now, I don't see that as security. Security is there to protect the system and the riders and then themselves. This Mr. Cook was a Marine for 8 years, but under the policy that our president and CEO wants, he wouldn't be allowed to have a gun. So I don't understand. That doesn't make sense to me. Lastly, I feel that if we don't make changes as this board, okay, that we're going to lose a lot of credibility with our partners. You heard the sheriff say, we are feeding our officers to the wolves. He said this in public, okay? People are demanding change. All you got to do is just look out there. And all I'm asking for is first decide, does this board feel that we are on the right track? Okay, everything's being done perfectly. Let's not change anything. Or do we feel that having a firearm and having some protection would actually help our security? Because I want to mention this. I was just told we had 280 armed officers on the system before we enacted this policy, and it was very unsafe. That's what we were just told. It was very unsafe. So now we have, we have 98 officers. They don't have firearms. So what we were just told is that it was our officers that were the problem. I don't believe that. I don't believe it is our security that's making things dangerous. I believe it's the bad guys that are making things dangerous. And I believe that we have got to have law and order. We have a firearm is not to use it 99% of the time. It's for a deterrent to stop these bad guys. When they know that nothing's going to happen to them, they just run wild. And we heard the details. Okay. I strongly believe that if this officer would have had a firearm, that he may be alive today. Not saying for sure, bad things do happen. I'm trying to prevent, and I want this board to try to prevent horrible incidences like this from happening in the future. So at the end of our discussion, I'm going to be making a motion. And this is kind of like a resolution, just so everybody can understand. Does the Bi-State Board of Commissioners believe that MetroLink security officers should be armed after completing a high degree of weapons training? That doesn't mean that we have to go out and arm them today. It's just, what does the board believe? And if you don't believe that, then vote no. But all I need is one commissioner from St. Clair County to say, yeah, maybe this isn't the right policy. All right. So that's my pledge. And I'm open for, if you guys have questions of me, I'm open to your stance, listening to you. I think it is so important that we come together and get this right.
Anybody else have comments?
So
Yes.
I'm confused. Is there a motion on the table, or because if I'm correct, we're not having an open discussion about something unless there is a motion on the table. So is there a motion on the table that has been seconded, and then we can begin an open discussion?
Okay, I'll make the motion and it will read, does the Bi-State Board of Commissioners believe MetroLink security officers should be armed after completing a high degree of weapons training?
There's a motion made by Commissioner Cox. Is
there an action in there? Because that to me appears to be not an actionable item. I need some clarification on the wording of that.
Chair Simmons, if I may,
Yes, please.
could make a brief comment. This is a security committee meeting.
Right.
So there are no formal board actions that can be taken at this meeting. This meeting would only be a recommendation of the security committee to the full board. And so any motion or voting in that regard is strictly a recommendation to the full board. And so making sure that that's very clear for everyone.
And I'm not the best at word. I'm not a lawyer, and I agree. It's a recommendation because again, we have to start with what do we actually think, and then how do we enact it? Justin, maybe you can help me out.
What
Go
is
ahead.
the recommendation?
The recommendation, you guys we can reword it if you'd like, but it's pretty clear on my end. This is a recommendation. How do we feel?
And I'm thinking this is something that should come up at the a regular board. You can make a recommendation and get it on the agenda for that. Am I right, Barb?
But Herb, that was my point. I've tried to get this on the agenda. We're trying to have a discussion, like Ms. Windmiller says. We're really not supposed to have a discussion until there's a motion and a second.
And what I am asking you, Commissioner Cox, is to put that in the form of an action, not do we believe. So I would suggest that if you want a recommendation and your recommendation is, I am recommending or I am putting forth a motion to arm security guards, that's fine. I'm happy to that would be appropriate, but I can't speak to a recommendation that says we believe.
Okay.
Well, we could. Well, hold on. We could look, because I want to discuss this as a debate we should have, but I think we need to be careful because I do have issues with the legal requirements that have been raised. I think those are things we need to work out. That being said, I mean, we can vote on like a resolution or like a policy. I mean, if you guys don't want to, I get it. Maybe it's just why should we have policy statements? But I'm not aware that we're prohibited from voting on a resolution.
Well, but there has to be a resolution that's drawn up and presented. Isn't that correct?
Well, that's what he's trying to do right here. And I guess the issue is people are saying, well, should we be voting on just like a policy statement like, mass transit is good. I get it. Where does that get us? But, I think
very simple. All I have to do is reword it. Does the Bi-State Board of Commissioners recommend MetroLink security officers should be armed after completing a high degree of weapons training? That's where it starts.
So what would be wrong with saying that you want to have this discussion put on the next board meeting to be on a part of agenda?
What is wrong with doing it right now at our security committee meeting right now?
Because I'm not going to vote on something that you can't even put in words to me right now for me to understand.
I just read it to you.
You've done it twice. You've done it twice. Which one are you going with?
I'm going with this one right here. You ready? Does the Bi-State Board of Commissioners recommend MetroLink security officers should be armed after completing a high degree of weapons training?
I'll second that motion. So let's discuss it. I just seconded it.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
So again, I think we need to go back to what Barb said, which is that this is not a board meeting. We can have this discussion, we can take a vote, but it needs to be the security committee, not the Board of Commissioners. So may I suggest that someone reword that to indicate that?
I'm confused. Are you saying this isn't a security committee meeting?
This is
a security meeting, but it has to be a recommendation to the full board. We can vote in the security meeting, but it still has to be taken to the full board.
Right.
I think if you just change I think if you just change it to say, does the security committee recommend instead of the whole committee? Is that what you're saying, Rose?
That's what I'm saying.
Yes.
Yes.
So if I may, Chair Simmons, yes,
Yes, go ahead.
it's a security committee making a recommendation to the full board. And that's,
Okay.
and whatever that recommendation is.
I understand now, Rose.
So you want to repeat that recommendation one more time?
Does the
Wanted that motion?
security, does the by-state security committee recommend that MetroLink security officers should be armed after completing a high degree of weapons training?
Are we ready to discuss?
Yes,
Okay. Chair, do you mind if I just start off and make a few points?
go ahead.
Sure. Look, I'll cut to it. We all want the safest system possible, not only for our riders, but for our employees or our contract employees. And this was said before, but we should constantly be analyzing where we're at with security, even in an extreme, awful, potentially outlier incident, to see what we can learn and how it comports with the overall policies and goals. Derek, before we made the motion, kind of mentioned two issues. I kind of get what he's saying, but I somewhat hesitate to make that motion, knowing that I do have issues with the legal requirements. But if it's at a basic level, is arming some of our contract security going to make the system safer? I mean, we can worry about, even if it's difficult, can we start to work to change the laws? What can we do to make sure we're having potentially armed guards in compliance with the compact? I get that, but at a very basic level, would having the option to arm some of these people improve security? Yes or no? Even if it's maybe only supervisors like Mr. Cook, maybe if it's only people who have had extra training, maybe if it's only, Kevin Scott mentioned technology's changed a lot. Maybe it's tasers. I know the statute prohibits deadly weapons. I don't know the exact definition of that. I assume it's, firearms and tasers. But, to me, this is a conversation worth having. To me, I think it probably would make sense for us to have at least some of these people armed. But I understand we've got certain limitations. So I think, we owe it to our staff and we owe it to everyone to kind of give them some guidance on this and where we stand. So those are my thoughts at a high level. I'm very pragmatic. I'm very open to hear people's opinions on this, but that's at least my initial thoughts.
I've got some. Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead. You go ahead.
I've got some thoughts too. So I listened to Commissioner Cox's statement. There was one framing in there that I didn't agree with. First of all, I think everybody on this board and everybody in the community is heartbroken over what happened, and status quo is not acceptable. That's the one thing I agree with Commissioner Cox on. But the framing he put up was either we think everything is fine or we're going to let these people have firearms. I don't reject that. I don't think everything is. It's not either everything's fine, we don't change anything, or we give everybody a gun. I don't think everything is fine. One of the things I'm interested in looking at is what kinds of calls are these G4S people involved in? Because we do have people on the system that have guns. We have uniformed officers in both the city and the county and an MOU with them, and they are carrying weapons. So do we want to reevaluate security posture to make sure? I think all of those things need to be looked at. I would also, when we're having this discussion, I think it's a little bit premature to talk about, do we think that they should have guns on the system, that these G4S officers should be armed? I want to hear what our police counterparts have to say about this. Do our St. Louis City and St. Louis County officers that are already on the system, what do they think about these folks being armed? Because I'm not a cop. I tend to listen to them when they're talking about what makes public safety better, and I would want their input on this discussion before I feel like I can have an informed opinion on whether or not these officers should be armed. So those are my thoughts on Commissioner Cox's motion.
Very good. Thank you.
And I would like to add that I would agree with Sam's comments, and I appreciate what Kevin said in closed session, but I do appreciate Sam's comments as well. I would like to see additional law enforcement officers working secondary as the opportunity arises. They have the experience and the training and the know-how. And if that's an option down the road, I think we should be looking at that. But I would agree with Sam.
Yes, I agree too with what Sam said. It would be very difficult for me to make to cast a vote on that particular issue without hearing from law enforcement specifically, and with just with a basic understanding of the legalities associated with what we currently, with the way that our system operates. So yeah, I think that I would definitely need to hear more, and hopefully there is a way that we can. I mean, I shouldn't say hopefully, I know there's a way that we can improve security and safety. I think that we all agree with that. It's just that the way that we do that, I think is a thoughtful consideration and decision that we need to make with once we're fully informed on the ramifications of any decisions that we make here as a board.
Yeah, I too agree with these comments. I don't see this as an either-or situation. It's a very complex situation. So at the university, which is located in Midtown, we patrol 150 buildings, literally hundreds of acres, and we have a mixed model of security. We have armed officers. We have unarmed officers. We use contract services. We contract with the St. Louis Metropolitan Police Department and bring in armed officers to supplement our work. And we have extensive use of technology. We are constantly evaluating our security, constantly adjusting. So I think it needs to be some sort of mixed model. And what that mixed model looks like, I think we have to depend upon the experts to advise us. I think clearly armed individuals are a key part of that. So I would like us to get the best advice we can and decide what proportion of each of those we need, from hiring St. Louis Metropolitan and other police officers to our own armed and unarmed security officers, as well as continued use and increased use of technology and so forth. Thank you.
Thank you.
And
Anyone
I
else?
also agree with all the comments. But the one thing I like to ask, and I know it probably have already came up before, what about the metal detectors? You know, I don't really hear nothing about it. Is it a real problem, cost factor to have any of this put in place, or what? Or it's a metal detector?
But Toby, can you answer that?
So I don't specifically have the answer to that, because that's like an individual detail that we would have to look into, a very complex issue. And it is very important, for instance, to see all of these decisions within the different context of the layered security system. For instance, when we move to adjusting the base security level, you can't talk about what our base security level is without also then in context talking about the number. And you heard Mr. Scott mention the secondary and how many we have available for that. And for instance, who are available within the different components of full police. I do absolutely have issue with Commissioner Cox, respectfully, with your statement where you said there is no protection and no personnel. That's not accurate, and that's the problem. If you limit just to one phase, you're not seeing it completely in what is a full and integrated plan. That full and integrated plan absolutely has to include officers, full police officers, as provided within the legal constraints. That's absolutely has to happen. I will back my team up today, tomorrow, and the next day, but not seeing it in context of the full staffing, I'm just saying is a mistake, and it's inflammatory, and it is not fair. And it is not fair to the full team. That is my point. And I think that this discussion has to be as it was for months and months under the WSP plan. You heard that it took nearly 2 years to go through, where we did go over these, albeit still we absolutely have to tune and look at these issues. And I need to respond to this board if what you need me to do is look at the legal limitations. But of course, I can't propose a plan, and did not propose a plan several months ago, that I could not legally implement. I can't do that within the context of my obligation to this board. So there are limits, and I want those limits to be discussed, I think, appropriately with Mr. Scott, who's certainly more professional about what those are, but I will work on all of those issues. And I simply want to add that this requires the context of all of the different levels of staffing. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Reply to your comments there, Talbot. You said it's not fair that I made a comment that we have no protection. Okay. Perhaps I misstated just a little bit, but Mr. Cook, when he was on that guard, he didn't have, or on that platform, he didn't have protection. I do understand, because I did the security tour and everything. I do understand that we can deploy an armed officer and they can get there within minutes. I do understand that. But a lot of times things happen like that. You don't have minutes. And again, a firearm is a deterrent. Okay. I've heard a few mentions of, what do our partners think? We need to hear what our partners think. Well, we heard one on TV and on the radio, saying that we are feeding our officers to the wolves. This is undangerous, or very dangerous. And he said that he was going to pull his detail unless we as a board do something. Okay, so that we heard from one. We haven't heard, I saw, they're not really a partner of ours as far as on MetroLink, but the Madison County board, they passed a resolution 24-0 to say that the system was unsafe, and they didn't agree with this policy. Okay, I understand that other organizations are going to be doing the same. We're going to be hearing from our partners, and I am glad that we are having this discussion, and it's going to move to the full board to hear from more of these folks. All right. I think I answered a couple of questions right there. Go ahead,
Justin, you have your hand.
Yeah, I've got a question. Sorry if I didn't ask it earlier, but I'm just, again, this is complicated, so sorry. It's something Kevin mentioned earlier, so this might be Kevin, this might be legal, but I understand, I've looked at the statute. I haven't seen like a full legal opinion that I'm aware of about the contract security. But we talked a little bit earlier about the decision to disarm our own internal people. Is our opinion that that's one and the same, that both internal bi-state employees cannot carry firearms as well as contract security, or is there a different nuance there that escapes me? Again, I'm just trying, there's people have really wisely pointed out, there's varying levels of options here, and I'm just trying to understand, within the context of our legal requirements, what's even an option at this point?
I can answer that if you'd like.
Sure, please do.
So we felt like, as far as the internal public safety staff, so direct Metro employees, the compact is profoundly clear.
Okay.
What does it state exactly? What is the law?
I don't have a copy of it in front of me. I'd have to pull it up.
Yeah.
Well, hold on. They didn't quote the actual statute, but there's some things. If you pull up the meeting materials, the statutes are cited, like the citations. It's not actually the law verbatim, but there's the statute cited. I don't know if it would. Look, if it would help anybody. If it wouldn't, that's why I said before we get into this legal discussion that could put everyone, although it's important, get really confusing, maybe at a more baseline level, we should decide if this would be helpful or not. But there's several statutes at play here. There's the compact, there's Missouri and Illinois state law. So there's a lot of moving pieces, but they're cited in the materials that were provided to us.
But Justin, you understand? I guess what my question is that there's no real reason to talk about, how we can do within this law if we don't want to do it. If the board doesn't think that we should have firearms, our officers should be carry weapons, then there's no reason to sit there and try to figure out this law. That's why I'm just starting on this level right here with the security committee. Do we think that it's a good idea to have weapons or not?
Barb, do you have a question or comment?
Well, I would just say that we're getting close with this discussion, talking about the legal issues.
Right.
And so that should be something that is absolutely conducted in a closed or an executive session. If we still want to just talk about the policy of arming in a more general way and law enforcement application and what's good and best practices, that's something else.
Right. Okay. I think everybody's had a chance to speak. If I've been keeping track here, I just want to throw my 2 cents in real quick before we still have the motion on the floor in a second. But I am personally, we have a security team made up of Kevin Scott and his team that has been doing an outstanding job. And yes, stuff does happen. But I think if we start trying to run the day-to-day operations of our security system without having their full input and that we don't have the full trust behind them, then I don't know why we have a security team. So I know there's a motion on the floor in a second, but I think this is something that needs a lot more discussion. I think by all means, legal needs to be involved because as Barb just said, we're treading on some thin ice here. So with that, I just think that we have to have trust in our security team. I trust Mr. Scott, his report today, in all my dealings that I've had with the team. They've been up front, up board. This is a very tragic thing that took place. And I agree with all the comments. I just think that haste makes waste. And I think, Derek, you're trying to put us out there wanting us to commit something that we have very limited information. I'm not going to vote for something that there's a law out there, and I don't know the full extent of that law, but I'm not going to vote one way without having all the information on that. So that's my 2 cents.
Do you understand this is a recommendation first?
And as I said, as I tried to relay to you in a subliminal way, I could support a motion authorizing this to go to the full board for further discussion. What you're trying to do now is to put each of these commissioners on the board saying that the policy and the study that was done for 2 years, they're not for it. And I think that especially for the new commissioners who are on here, they need to have time to understand that and go through that before they can make a conscious decision on it.
Just so you understand, I'm not trying to put pressure or anybody on board members. I'm trying to actually save lives, Commissioner. That's what
I think we all are.
Right? You agree? You believe that's why I'm passionate about this, correct?
I think you are.
Don't say I'm doing this to try to put pressure on anybody. I'm doing this to try to help riders and our security officers. That's why I'm doing it.
If you are, I would ask that you maybe rephrase your motion to say, can we put this on the agenda for the next coming meeting for further discussion, allowing our new members to have more time to review this?
Again, it moves to the full board and we can have more discussions. And why are we shutting the discussion down right now? I still had other questions.
There is a motion on the floor that you wanted, and it was seconded by Justin. And everybody, I think, has had comments on it. So I just wanted to say that I feel personally that this is a major decision on a tragic incident that took place, that you're wanting each of these commissioners to vote to say that they support this or that without having full information on it.
But what I'm saying is, Herb, this is to move it to the next level, to have more. This is not implementing anything right now. Then just change the motion to say, can this go on to the full meeting? That's what it says, security subcommittee. That's what we're in right now. Okay. let's make it basic. Let's make it easy for everybody to understand. Let's make it easy. Instead of having all this, okay, do you believe, Herb and each commissioner, that having an armed officer is safer or less safe?
And I think you're trying to put words in the commissioner's mouth because
and what type of officer and what, like, it's more complicated than that, right? I mean, that's why everybody's raising the issue.
And that's why I'm saying we need to have legal involved in this more than they are now. And a simple, let this go on to the full board for further discussion. That solves your problem.
But again, I tried to do this last time, 9 months ago.
Then the full board can make a decision at that time.
What's that?
Then the board can make a decision at that time if they agree or disagree with what you're asking for.
But you agree that 9 months ago, I sat in this, and this was in person, and I brought this up, and you guys denied me even have a chance at a second to even have the discussion. You just shoved it through. No discussion. Do you understand? That's why I'm trying to have a discussion right now. I would love to hear everybody's take on it because Mr. Costello even said, he said, you know, maybe it should be a mix of armed and not armed. Mr. Cook was a Marine. He had all the training, okay? We have money. If money's an issue, we have money to train these folks. And the question that I had, TSS Metro employees, okay? We have some that carry, correct?
No.
No one in this
Again, the difficulty, Chair, if I may.
Go ahead.
The problem is, again, that there is a lack of context of what the individual, as a matter of fact, it is a fact that right now we have a mix of different weapons in different tiers of qualification. Okay, this was vetted and gone over specifically. It's very uncomfortable and not accurate to vote on a specific issue like that when, of course, it is not within the context of what is the overall staffing and what is the overall training involved. We're getting down to the detail on an oversimplified motion that is troublesome and very troublesome from a legal standpoint. Part of my job is to protect the interest of not only the organization, but also of the commissioners so that we are doing things within the context of those limitations that is doable. And so that I apologize. Some of these discussions are appropriate to have at Mr. Scott's level, not even my level, and within the professionalization of review from WSP, including Mrs. Stewart. We had months and months of this. It includes a lot of these elements. And sure, we should discuss it and be sure that we didn't miss anything, but focusing just on one component of personnel, limiting the discussion, that it doesn't have the context of training, doesn't have the context of the other elements of a multi-layered process. Again, I will say, and I'll continue to say, that under the context of the legal ramifications and the plan, yes, we need weapons on the system, but the way to get them there is that there must be a badge behind them. That's it. That's what the law says.
Thank you.
May I ask a quick question, please?
Yes, go ahead.
Of our general counsel, the compact is a public document, correct?
Correct.
Is it appropriate for me to ask for your legal interpretation of that document in an open session, or does that need to be done in closed session?
Given the context of the history of the organization and our different posture today, I would prefer that discussion occur in closed session so that those sorts of questions and answers and information can be fully explored.
Thank you.
Because there are legal and liability ramifications for the agency.
I appreciate that. Thank you. So my comment will be this then. then I cannot in good conscience even vote on this resolution because I don't have a legal opinion about what a pro or con, a yes or no vote would do. So I'm having a very difficult time even suggesting that we vote on this. I realize it's just me, but I will say that without a legal opinion about whether this is a legal motion, this is a problem for me.
Well, let me ask Miss, is this a legal motion that I made?
Yes, Commissioner Cox's motion is legal. However, the import of that, has significant ramifications.
We understand. And here's what I'm trying to let the board understand. Laws can be changed. We've seen it on this very board. The makeup's going to change. You guys went to Springfield to take a seat away from Madison County and it happened. Okay. What I'm saying is laws can be changed. So do we just throw our hands up and say, well, that's just the way it is and that's the way it's going to be for the next 100 years? Or do we say as a board, this isn't working. Let's look at this. Let's talk about this. And it starts with saying, we think that arming our officers or some of our officers makes sense. Let's figure out how to do this. And then if it means lobbying Congress or whatever it takes, it might just take a signed document from each of our partners. I don't know, because each time I ask for the specific law or I bring up, well, we did it that way for decades. How all of a sudden is it illegal? Then for decades, was it okay? And now it just magically changed. So I just, laws can be changed and they change all the time. First, we have to decide what we want as bi-state for the best for security. That's what I'm pushing for.
Okay, thank you. And just before I call a vote, again, I reiterate the fact that I just don't think there's enough information that we all have, especially our new commissioners. So I would ask that everybody just be mindful of that. When you vote, there is a motion and a second on the floor. Myra, call the vote.
Commissioner Cox,
Yes.
Commissioner Zimmerman,
Yes.
Commissioner Winmiller,
I'm sorry, I need the motion read to me again, please.
the motion was, does the Security Committee recommend to the board that Metrolink security officers be armed after receiving a high degree of weapons training?
I vote no.
Commissioner Brown,
Vote no.
Commissioner Costello,
No.
Commissioner Simmons,
No.
Commissioner Beach,
No.
Commissioner Gladney,
No.
Commissioner Johnson.
No.
The motion failed.
Okay, thank you. No other business to become for the board. I entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Guess I'll talk to everybody in a few
Perfect.
months.
Have a roll call.
A voice vote sufficient.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Ayes have it. Thank you, everybody. Have a good day.
Thank you.